should you be using AI to challenge what your vision is and help you create it?
If you've got 3 or 4 competitors that really heavily adopt AI, then you're probably going to have a problem. Yeah.
What I'm saying is get AI to really challenge you on uncomfortable questions that maybe you weren't presenting yourself to start.
But I think probably more values are probably more important than ever now.
Because of the march of AI, we need to be much more precise about all sorts of bits of running our business. Good morning, Mr. Buckle.
Morning.
How you doing? Haven't seen you for a couple of days. I've been out in the office.
Yeah.
Been busy.
Did I report on my Stanley knife incident last week?
I think you might have talked about your weight in A&E. Yes, that was all related to
Hand pretty much fully healed.
I thought it was only young people that healed quickly.
Wow.
Well done.
You drink from the fountain of youth.
You can now wave to the camera and people will see that you haven't got this injury. So you've been a bit more careful with the Stanley knife these days.
Yeah. Don't play with knives, kids.
Very good. Excellent. That's what you were going to talk about this morning, wasn't it? You were going to give us another rendition of your Stanley knife incident. People have spared it now.
Yeah, they spared it. But no, I was quite happy with my progress of the hand,
You take a photograph of it every day and do a little time lapse of the healing process.
I should have done, really. But it was wrapped under.
Of course, it was all covered up with the dressing.
But it has made me think I need to get some steri strips for home, just so I can sort myself out, rather than burden.
Well, does that go along with the rest of your prepper checklist of having, torch with batteries, FM radio?
It does
water
play into that side of my personality, yes.
Have more than your average first aid
med kit, I think I would call it. Yeah,
proper med kit. Okay, well there you go. We'll do a whole episode on how to prepare for.
We haven't done a business prepper episode for a while, have we? Actually,
no. Well, the business continuity bit. Yeah, it's actually a good point. Maybe the business will last longer than the employees if they haven't got food and drink at home.
Yeah,
they won't be turning up to work, will they?
9 meals from Anarchy.
So you've said before.
That
haunts me. That I sometimes wake up in a cold sweat with that 9 meals from Anarchy theory. Right, before we get too far down that rabbit hole, as ever with you.
That's my other podcast. Yeah.
That's another podcast. Oh, yeah. We're not cross-promoting that one. Right, let's do a proper podcast.
Let's do a proper podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow with me and Rich back in the room.
Back in the room.
A guest or two recently, haven't we? But it's nice to catch up again, see what we're talking about. We're up to episode 157.
Wow.
They're just ticking over. I'm sure that's a darts finish, but we haven't done darts finishes for a while.
157.
In fact, last week I even forgot to do the last 3 episodes. So sorry everybody who was tutting as they listened. But Dave, you've not done the last 3.
Disorientated everybody.
It's because I had a guest and I was all discombobulated. So yes, last week was episode 156. That was with Kristen Gilchrist. She was talking about the psychology of business meetings. It was quite interesting. Topic that interests us quite a lot. We've done more than a lifetime's worth of meetings, haven't we?
Fair share meetings.
Exactly. So the psychology of it all, the hierarchy and the hidden meaning and all that. That was interesting. 155 was before that. That was your idea, that one. Is this really a great business idea? And checking whether there's gap in the market, market gap, and make money out of it, and how much investment will it take and all that. Trying not to put people off the idea, but a rude awakening to the realities.
Yeah, sanity check.
And then to open the year, we had Tom Meehan on the how to stay active and some of the sort of business-leaning ways of thinking about getting yourself in shape, treating it as a project, and the fact that it's not as self-indulgent as a lot of people think. It does benefit the business too, because you think better and your memory's better and you're sharper and all that. So that's this year so far.
There we go. I'm a work in progress.
We're nearly a month in already.
Been taking my probiotics every day.
Yeah, I have homemade kefir.
Yeah.
Big fan of that.
I've gone for more of a shock treatment.
Why is it a shock treatment?
It's just more kind of, I don't know what it is, just a mixture of whatever the bacteria are.
Yeah.
Get them in there.
Pack them in. Good. Well, hopefully your
I feel a lot better for it.
Your gut health is improved.
Watch this space.
Yeah, give a report. So, episode 157. You saw an article in HBR. You saw another podcast on this. And
there's a lot
triggered you to think about this topic.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk around AI at the moment.
Really?
Have you heard about this AI
What's
thing?
AI stand for?
This AI thing.
Another initiative.
Yeah. And this is my YouTube feed is pretty much stacked with just AI going to end the world
I guess
type
the
of thing.
algo has worked. It's done its trick on there.
I am slowly weaning myself off YouTube, by the way.
It's the last bastion.
It's the last,
of your doom scrolling.
Exactly. And I found a helpful trick is to reorganize my apps. So what I found was the muscle memory
where to go
would be you'd pick your phone up and I'd swipe and I could press and it would get me into YouTube.
Almost in the dark.
And so I thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reshuffle my apps around.
So you're going to go for
and that's a couple of seconds of having to find it is enough to make me think, actually, I could do something more productive with my time.
It's probably, that feeds into what Tom was talking about, habit forming.
Yeah.
And similarly, I'm completely unrelated, but in terms of habit forming, I've started logging my calories this month to see how much I lie to myself about my snacking.
Yeah.
Because I try to eat sensibly, and I think I'm reasonably good at it normally. But I know that my weaknesses are cheese, crisps when I get home, maybe the slice of toast when I'm peckish, a beer here and there. And they sort of go unnoticed if you're not careful. Okay. So interestingly, because I'm now having to go on to the app and log it, even yesterday I was at a business meeting, the brown buffet came out at lunchtime, not a single piece of greenery in sight.
Excellent.
And I was being very good with myself.
It's hard though, isn't it?
It is hard.
Yeah. Well, you manage what you measure. So
you do, and you get what you measure. Exactly. So anyway, today we were talking about AI.
So
then,
AI,
but a slightly different angle.
Well, I was thinking about what should business. I guess because it's the start of the year, it's almost still sort of.
We're a month in.
We're a month in. A lot of people thinking about vision we haven't done, we normally do a bit of a vision thing. We haven't really done one. But I thought, well, what if we combine vision and AI, and what should businesses?
Oh, it's a mashup.
It's a mashup. It's the takeover or whatever it is. The kids do on the social web. So I was just thinking, how should business owners start thinking about vision, in particularly over the next maybe shorter term, 2 to 3 year vision, with the way that AI is tracking at the moment? Do you mean in terms of how AI is woven into your vision, or how in a world of having lots of AI, your vision, whether or not you're using AI, needs to either be sharper or different? Both of the above.
Okay.
So I think there's some interesting stuff we can talk about we talked about Collins Porras before, I think episode 6 or 7, if you want a deep dive on that of the podcast.
Well, it's worth a quick review in a minute. Yeah.
Deep into the annals of the way that talks about
the whole what is a vision question.
What is a vision?
Yeah.
And how that links into values and purpose and things. And I think there's almost an ethical question there, maybe around some of the AI things.
Good point.
But also in a world where AI is, we're already looking at a jobs market which isn't only due to rising, national employer costs and everything else.
Wages.
There's wages. There is a component in there of, well, you can now use AI. 5 years ago, you couldn't have had that conversation around the board table, could you?
And it's affecting certain employee types, isn't it? Age groups, for example. I was reading the stats that the unemployment figures are now the highest they've been for a number of years. They've taken a big tick up. Number of vacancies is the lowest. Remember, after COVID, we were talking about, I can't believe it, it's 1.3 million vacancies. Well, we're down to about 700,000 now, which is around about as low as it gets, just for normal churn levels.
So, and there's an interesting Diary of a CEO. Have you heard that podcast?
Podcast. Some bloke, Steve, someone like that. Not heard of him.
Stevie.
No.
He's got this little podcast he's doing.
It's not as good as ours, is it? Well, it takes him 70 people to produce that. I mean, we do.
There's got to be some measure where we would beat that, isn't there?
On a per person
involved. Right, that's the challenge. We've got to find the metric where we beat Diary of a CEO. Yeah. But anyway, he had an ex-Google chappie on, and he was talking about this whole, what the social implications of AI, particularly around, are we going to get into the whole universal basic income, and basically what would be the motives as we consolidate all of these businesses? You've long
been of the view that the pace of change on this is different to previous shocks like the Industrial Revolution or production lines, or even mechanizing agriculture. You think that we're not going to be able to cope this time.
No.
Whereas every time previously we could.
Yeah, I think the rate of change is so fast.
So we're going to have mass unemployment, or a major structural
I think there's potential for that. And I think, where do you go when AI can really do a lot of And even the argument, well, everyone will become plumbers, or just they'll be making millions. Well, if everyone becomes plumbers, then plumbers are on
no more dripping
£7
taps.
an hour. So there's but we could. I don't really want to go down the doomsday.
I'm slightly
thing.
less pessimistic than you.
But,
just if listeners are looking for a balance.
But I do think
I take your point.
there are some really. I think businesses really need to think seriously, because I think what will definitely happen in the short term, 2 to 3 years, is that those businesses that really do adopt AI. I probably should say that I would prefer to live in a world without AI, but you've got to be realistic, right? We're just riding the wave.
Well, which other technologies would you rather do without then? Would you do without the internet? Social media, maybe.
Social media, definitely.
The instant universal access to all information is surely better. There's more positives than negatives on that.
Yeah, maybe. I could be 50-50 on that.
But certainly AI has pushed you over the edge. You'd rather.
I could. Well, I do. I mean, I use it every day. I mean, I'm not averse to it, but I think there's some pretty serious social.
Well, maybe that's the distinction we need to draw, that where it's a useful tool, just like a spell checker in Word, there's stuff that AI does which triages your inbox or helps you summarize documents or whatever it maybe, does some research for you. They're just tools. They're reasonably benign and they're making us more effective. And becoming more effective makes the country more productive, and productive means that we can all carry on having a good standard of living. So there's not a lot negative about that bit of it. The bit that I think you're referring to is that taken to its extreme with everything that it can do, it's at such a scale and changing so quickly that it has a major impact on the balance of what everybody does in their lives. Yeah. And if it's true, the Reid was saying that the number of graduate vacancies has dropped from 170,000 in a typical September to 500,000 or fewer, 50,000. There's just no graduates getting into the workplace because their jobs are being taken by AI. So I get that. I get the point that this is beyond just. Well, there's two bits of it, like I say. There's a bit which is think it's a perfectly valid, handy, useful tool which we can all benefit from, just like a word processor did when it first came out instead of typing. But there's this other bit where it's so powerful. And
I think it's like CFCs, isn't it? When CFCs first came out in the 18, whenever it was, everyone thought it was amazing because it was a non-flammable gas that could be used
as a
refrigerant. Whereas it's not until years down the line.
Or a propellant, wasn't it? CFCs as well. They were in fridges and in aerosols.
But it was the non-flammable. So there's the whole. You can imagine all these Victorian blokes sitting around and they were spraying it on a flame and nothing was. And it was just.
I'm sure they were doing that just for kicks.
And that was the thing. It's like there's no explosion here. This is really good. And it's not until years later that we see. Okay, well actually maybe there's some unintended consequences. Yeah. So I think we're seeing that in a compressed timeline. But I actually think that from business leaders' point of view. Okay, how can you, what's the proverb? Those who see danger should take refuge type of thing. And
what about those that don't see danger? What does it say about that? They should be led to refuge by those that saw it.
Well, I think those that don't see it normally end up suffering the consequences.
You don't get a chance. It's too late.
So I think there is that kind of, when we're talking about vision, how does AI play into that in both your own internal processes, but also what does it look like in your wider, if you've got 3 or 4 competitors that really heavily adopt AI, then you're probably going to have a problem in 5 years' time.
So is this just a question, certainly in terms of the audience we're talking to here and running businesses, is this just a question about how you run your business, so you take a reasonably parochial or localized view of it? Or do you think woven into the values part of the Collins Boris vision framework, which we'll cover in a minute, that you've got to take a slightly more societal view about, what's it going to do to promotion prospects of people and young people coming to the workplace, and even outside your company, what's your market changing like? What happens if your customers can no longer afford your products because they aren't getting into the workplace? Do you think that we've got to think that big in your vision? That's a big ask. Right?
That is a big ask.
Maybe we should start with the first bit then.
I think the first bit, but I do think some of the values bit maybe do play into the HBR article in terms of how people are perceived to be using AI.
Yeah, well, just for people to know then, we're talking about volume 104, this January-February edition of HBR 2026. And there were 2 articles this month, both of which came out with sort of slightly counterintuitive, thought-provoking thoughts. So if people hear this, you talk about this one that you saw, and I'll talk about the one about the HR department. This is about competency, or rather the perception.
The perception of whether or not you're competent if you use AI. So they were finding people aren't adopting AI as much as they were perhaps thinking people would.
Right.
And C-suite and managers are encouraging their teams to adopt AI, be more productive, get more done. But they were finding that not as many people were picking it up as they were hoping. And when they actually looked at it, what they found with the research was that there's almost a slight stigma attached to if you're using AI to do your job. And then they broke that down by gender, and it turns out that
so
men,
there's a gender difference.
Yeah, so there's a gender difference, but also men who don't use AI have a much more kind of disparaging view of people that use AI compared to other groups.
Other groups being women who don't use AI.
Yeah.
You're being very PC on that one.
But
so the point there is that they're saying that through some research, they found one of the barriers to greater adoption is the perception by their peers, presumably, and colleagues, that they're, in some way cheating, or they're not good enough to do it themselves.
Not competent enough. So
they're having to rely on... But we never thought about that when you saw someone using Grammarly to do their grammar checking on their emails, did you? Or did you?
Probably did. Because you thought, you take out to use an apostrophe, you've got to use...
Whereas you're using software because you weren't...
Well, it's like when I used to drive a manual. I used to think everyone that drove an automatic couldn't drive. And it's not until I started driving automatic that I thought, why on earth would you drive a manual?
Yeah. Good metaphor, though, because people these days are learning in automatics.
Yeah.
And they won't be able to drive a manual.
Yeah, so I thought it's interesting from an adoption point of view.
It's one at least that I think business owners and managers should be aware of, that one of the hidden barriers maybe to adoption isn't not wanting to or not knowing how to. It's the fact that there's this fear of how will I be perceived if I do.
Yeah.
And the other article that was in the same issue of the magazine was quite a thought-provoking idea that as AI grows in competence, should you combine the HR department, responsible for all of our human-based resources that do value-adding stuff, with the IT department, responsible for all the AI-based resources, silicon-based resources that are adding value?
Carbon versus silicon.
And it's an interesting thought that if we regard them as, in some realms, almost equivalent, then why would we have one department that looks after the messy, human versions, and one department that looks after the maybe also messy but silicon versions? I think it concluded that maybe that is a stretch too far at this stage, but the fact that they asked the question, I thought was quite thought-provoking.
Well, particularly if you had robots as well. If you had a factory with robots in.
Yes, that's true. If you go beyond just the desk-based AI, but you've got Android-looking, androgynous automated
I read an interesting thing the other day that apparently we're spending a lot of money to get robots to walk in an anthropomorphic way, like humans, purely because there's a much more efficient way for them to actually move around, but it's kind of freaky.
Right.
And so...
What does it look like if they're doing them more efficiently?
It's a more of a kind of spidery dog kind of weird thing.
They need more legs for that.
It looks a little bit kind of weird. And so they were saying we're actually spending all this time and effort just because it freaks us out if we see
Maybe it's a step we have to take. Get more familiar with the fact that there's humanoid versions out there, and then add another leg or put wheels on or do whatever you need to do to make it better. Anyway, that's definitely taking us off beat. So back to vision then. Do you want to quickly review the Collins-Porras as a framework?
So Collins-Porras, I think we've done a whole episode on this. I can't remember what it is now, but it's early single-digit numbers podcast. Way back in the annals.
You won't have to look that up because you're just going to
I'm just going to quickly say it. So there's two parts of the Collins-Porras. So Jim Collins, Jerry Porras came up with this in the 80s after their research, Good to Great. They looked at what makes great companies, what's their vision look like, and they came up with two areas. First one is the core ideology. And so the core ideology is made up of values and purpose. And so values would be the things that are kind of innate to your DNA of your organization. You wouldn't compromise them even if it cost you money, type of thing. Like what makes you you. And purpose is why you exist. And then, so that's kind of the ideological core. And then you have an envisaged future, which is BHAG, which is big, hairy, audacious goals, the polite version.
Big, hairy ass goals.
Big, hairy ass goals, which is your kind of where we want to be 20, 25 years. I don't know whether that's dated itself now, given that things are
Yeah, maybe
compressed.
2 years is far enough in the future.
And then a vivid description, which is almost the kind of, I was describe it as if I was telling my mates in the pub.
Describe it as if it's already happened.
Describe it as if it's already happened. 2-minute kind of summary of where you see you're at.
Yeah.
So
that you end up with a kind of a one pager, and you've got 4 columns on it.
4 columns. 2
on the left, 2 on the right. The ideology bit, purpose and values on the left, and they're kind of longer lasting, aren't they? They're sort of North Star type stuff.
They're more discovery.
What we're here for, and how do we behave?
Yeah.
And then on the right, it really brings it to life with the BHAG. So that's have some numbers in that bit, don't you?
Yeah,
smart. This turnover, or this market share, or this number of people, or this many customers served. And then the vivid description, you start to describe, the size of the building, the product offering, how we're marketing it, what do we look like?
What it looks like.
Okay, so overlaying then our new thinking about how AI is affecting the world, are we just saying that you just need to revisit your Collins-Porras vision, or those 4 aspects of your vision, but now put your AI thinking cap on? Or do you think it actually changes how you come up with these things? Should you be using AI to challenge what your vision is and help you create it?
I suppose it's a good sparring partner anyway, isn't it? I mean, ChatGPT is quite a good sparring partner from that point of view.
I think, sure you prompt it well, haven't you? Because it can be a bit sycophantic and just agree with everything you say. Unless you go to Grok or something, which is in the news, it's a bit more adversarial.
But I think probably more values are probably more important than ever now. Retaining who you are as a company from a human point of view.
Yeah, we had a chat about that earlier, didn't we? And I think there's an innate understanding in an organisation, and hopefully more so than just writing down your values, because we've seen that happen where the consultants come in, agree 5 pithy words and put them on the wall or so. It's virtually meaningless. Yeah. And yet we all do know how we do business around here. We know what it comes from the top for a start. It's led by the leaders, but it's also just woven into everything we do. Yeah. But it's not recorded in a way that an AI tool of any sort would necessarily pick it up. It'll be water cooler chats, just how somebody answers the phone maybe, or just how we greet each other, how we behave in the office. So at the moment, if AI is going to be taking on more of the workload, even if today it's still at the lowish end, the sort of graduate replacement end, sadly, but it's going to go more up the value chain, then it's going to be asked to make judgment calls, decisions, and act in a certain style. But it won't have had the same input that the humans would have been able to pick up on by noticing things like body language and all the stuff that we're good at doing, just because it hasn't had the input. I'm sure if it had full awareness, it could do it.
Yeah, and often I think some of those values are expressed with nuance, aren't they?
Definitely, yeah.
And so how does an AI pick up on that? So like you say, if you've now got an AI that's running all of your project management, well, there are going to have to be judgment calls made, and does that need to then refer back to some form of value document or something to give it some ethical...
Well, true, because the problem with the words defining your values is that they will say things like integrity and teamwork and all that sort of stuff, which is all very well and good. But when it comes down to a hard decision, you're doing the project management example, you've run out of capacity in the week, and you've got to choose between delivering on one client's work and failing on another, or vice versa, or doing half both. None of that will have been explained by the 5 pithy words you chose in your values list, will they? That is only known by the humans, because last time that happened, or last time we got close to that, this is how we dealt with it. We tried first to make the problem go away, reschedule the tasks, rescope the problem, but then when it came to it and we had to make a decision, we went this way rather than that way. Yeah. And we don't tend to write that down because it's the messy stuff. It's the stuff we don't like to admit, that sometimes we've got difficult decisions. Yeah. Or if we've got 2 candidates that present similarly on paper and interview similarly, which one do we end up going for? Yeah. Is it
gut feeling kind of...
Gut feel. Do we have unconscious bias where we choose the person that's most like us or whatever? Or are we the other way and we go for diversity's sake and choose the opposite? How do we behave? And that's not written down very well. So as AI makes more of these, hiring decisions, project management decisions, prioritizing decisions. Yeah, you're right. We need to be perhaps more explicit in quite an uncomfortable way. We've got to say stuff about how we behave, which we don't like to admit.
Yeah, you have to be quite honest about that and how. And I think there was that experiment or question that came up around self-driving cars and that sort of thought experiment. Okay, you've got a junction, 4 cars come into each other, they're going to crash. There's going to be a fatality.
So all 4 cars can tell there's going to be a crash.
All 4 cars can tell that, one's got an old professor in, one's got a mother with a child, you got the whole scenario. And the point around it was that somewhere someone's got to code in what the ethics decision and framework is going to be.
Well, someone has, even if they don't realize it.
Yeah.
They've written some algorithm which will come up with an answer, but without being necessarily explicit.
So
to
who
say
does that?
we prioritize, mother with young child versus old person who's about to die.
And I think a lot of people listening have probably heard that story. But it's quite a famous kind of
It's a kind of AI ethics
classic. But I don't know whether many business owners have thought, well, the thinking there is, well, that's for Elon Musk to worry about, right? Or someone who's making self-driving cars. Our business isn't doing anything close to that.
You'd think.
Whereas now,
It's maybe not life and death.
in the last couple of years, we are now bringing we've got that kind of power of computing available within your business.
Yeah. Well, already we're using it, let's say, to help us write proposals. So we get it to scan all of the emails, meeting notes, calls, whatever's been going on that you've had through a negotiation process, and help it to summarize for you what the pain points have been from the customer and how they map across to the solutions we give. Now, we obviously check that. We don't send that out blindly. However, there is still a scope for flavor or a nuance to be overlaid on top of that isn't yours because you didn't do the first draft. You just checked it and maybe tweaked it. Now, what happens if then down the road, 6 months, years down the road, someone says, well, hang on, didn't we mention such and such? And you go back through it, and sure enough, it was there. It just wasn't given the right priority by the AI. Whose fault is that? Clearly, it's yours, right? You own it, but you've subcontracted some of that drafting.
Maybe someone could have said it who wasn't identified as a decision maker or something. You know what I mean? Because you could have different people saying things that I think there's so many questions around this. I mean, we're into a bit of an ethics question here, but I think that is where, from a vision point of view, if you're thinking about where your vision and the Collins-Porras model, the values and the purpose are almost a bit of an anchor in the shifting sea of AI.
Your metaphors are flowing today, Richard.
So I think that would be my point on that. I think though, when we come to BHAG, I think it's interesting to think. So the BHAG used to be a sort of 20, 25 year goal. I think AI may have shortened that time horizon because things move so much faster now than probably in the late 80s when they were developing this model. But also that vivid description, it's going to look wildly different. If we'd have written a vivid description 3 years ago,
that'd be very wrong.
It would be very wrong compared to what we would do if we wrote it now.
Yeah.
Which then begs the question, what would it look like in 2 years' time?
If things are accelerating. I thought about a slightly different angle on that as well, but I like that point that you've got to shorten the timescale because of the pace of change. The quantum of change just happens so much faster. But I was also wondering whether this is where AI can help us a bit more. So whereas in the past we maybe used to come up with a BHAG and a vivid description which sounded fine on first glance and it's enough to get the message across, did its job explaining what you're trying to do. But now you could really ask AI to play devil's advocate, work through the consequences, do so much more deep thinking on it in a way that only maybe bigger companies could do this if they've got a strategy department to plan it all through, but smaller companies don't. You've now got the ability to do that. To say, well, if I were to have this as my vivid description, what does that sound like? Is that, do you think even in my wildest dreams, achievable? Or is someone else doing that already? Am I challenging myself enough? And then what's the difference between that and now? And really help me be explicit about the gap and what the actions need to be. So it could be more useful, right?
Almost like a what if kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll even go back to your vision, your values bit, which I agree we need to be much more explicit about, because if we're going to rely somewhat more on programmed things, then we need to be able to tell it as well. But maybe you could also ask it to ask difficult questions. So when you say integrity, then what exactly do you mean by that? There's some easy questions, like someone asks you to do something wrong, you can refuse. That's easy. What about you over invoice? How long do you wait until you tell the client and refund the money? Because lots of companies think, well, I'll just wait until they ask for it. I'll put it on the balance sheet. It's theirs if they want it, but they've got to ask for it first. And others will say, no, absolutely not. We're going to refund that straight away. Well, then take that to the next level. What about if someone pays for something and they don't use it? Well, the contract was that they were going to pay for it. So what I'm saying is get AI to really challenge you on uncomfortable questions that maybe you weren't presenting yourself to start with.
So I think, there's opportunity there in amongst the challenge of AI and where it's going to, where is it going to be in 2 years' time, 3 years' time. I think it's worth thinking through not only how do you use AI to help shape your vision, like we're just talking about there, back and forth, scenario plan, test validity of your arguments, that type of thing. But also think about it in the terms of, right, okay, if you're in an environment now where AI is becoming ubiquitous, or you've got competitors that are seriously investing in AI, are you going to be left behind? Are you going to be part of the vanguard? Are you going to be,
I think it's the first subject really of several on how, because of the march of AI, we need to be much more precise about all sorts of bits of running our business. And it starts with, like you say, the vision and the values and where we're trying to go with it. But even down to what is our USP and our marketing messaging, our market positioning, what's our sales process, how do we design new products, all of those things we were able to sort of not quite make up as we go along, but in typical SME fashion, you do enough definition to be able to get the job done. And everybody around you, be practical. Whereas I think the more we're going to rely on AI inference type tools, then the more you've got to be much clearer about what it actually is.
You can get fuzzy AI.
Well, it's already quite fuzzy, but my worry about it is that it can only learn based on what it knows.
Yeah.
And it's not listening to everything we talk about. Maybe that'll come. But at the moment, it's got access to our emails and our meeting notes and anything we then tell it or upload it. But we're not giving it all that rich information that we as humans interact with. If you and I go for a pint after work on a Friday, we'll possibly have a reasonably relevant conversation at some point between ordering the next drink, and that doesn't get recorded. So AI will never know some of these things.
Yeah.
Yet, until we're all wearing meta glasses and recording everything all the time.
Yeah.
There's a dystopian future that's probably just around the corner.
Exactly. Like an episode of Black Mirror or something, isn't it?
My goodness.
I think it actually is an episode of Black Mirror, actually.
Oh, there you go.
On that.
Okay.
So yeah.
Good topic.
There we go.
Good topic. So
a thought provoker
if
rather
nothing
than
else, it's been a good reminder, given that it's January, for everybody to go back and just dust off their vision, their Collins Porus, if they've not looked at that before, the sort of 4 aspects of that. Have you got a fairly clear view? But also overlay some of that AI thinking now. Are you taking a bit more care with things like values and BHAGs and all that stuff?
Maybe that point as well from the HBR article of just, if you're using it, how's it impacting your culture? Are you creating a 2-tier, we use it versus we don't use it?
The early adopters within a company, you mean, versus those?
Just those that don't use it because of the stigma of if you can't code, you shouldn't be using AI to code, coders versus vibe coders.
Yeah, but there's lots of examples, aren't there, of people who've been put out of business, the typewriter, maintenance man, all that sort of thing. Gosh, lots of thought-provoking stuff there, and some prompts from the HBR articles. I'm particularly vexed by this one about combining the HR department with the IT, just because it's all going to merge. The thought of humans being considered as equivalent to their AI assistants is quite a scary thought.
Yeah,
we're not there yet, but the question being asked suddenly makes you realise, will we be? Right, thanks for that.
There we go.
Good topic. Thank you as well for listening to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast. That was episode 157, and you may well have listened to a few before us, but if not, delve into the archives, especially that one that Richard referred to right back at the beginning, talking about vision and strategy and culture and all those things that we did way back when. If you can, pass on the message to people you know in business, friends, family, people at work, mention it in the pub, and in the meantime, good luck with your business.